Martin, for that presentation, which bears witness to the very critical moment that we are now facing as a planet. I would suggest to us, as I think we know in our hearts and in our minds, that this is perhaps the most critical moment humans have ever had to face on the planet. In our 150,000 years of being Homo sapiens sapiens on this planet, we are still yearning for the full definition of sapiens. And that is, I think, what this challenge represents. We are a very late arrival on a planet that is 4.5 billion years old in its evolution, its complexity, a universe that is 14 billion years old in its evolution and complexity. And I do think that this large-scale perspective is absolutely essential for us to understand why what we are doing within a 200-year period of industrialization is shutting down the life systems of the planet, the ecosystems, the forests, the fisheries, the air, the water. We are affecting the planet as no other species ever has. In part because we went in 1 century from 2 billion to 6 billion people. There's no question that that population explosion has made our presence like an octopus around the planet. So the response of the religions is something I want to talk about a little bit here, but I want to underscore how very complex this is, how long the development of these life systems has been, and what is happening to destroy that complexity is beyond what we can measure, beyond all the graphs that have even been shown. Because as quickly as science tries to understand what we're doing, we realize the destruction is happening even faster than we can measure it. And so part of the issue here is how we absorb what science has been telling us for more than a decade now. The intergovernmental panels of climate change are over a dozen years old, and we've had these charts that have been pushing us towards awareness. But it somehow is an awareness that hasn't yet penetrated our consciousness. And that is the challenge, I think. And especially when now, as never before, the human face of climate change is becoming ever more evident. Certainly for those of us in the United States, I think first, before I make any further statements, I think we have got to take enormous responsibility for the fact that 4% of the world's population is using 25% of the world's resources, but also creating greenhouse gases of that same extent. It is absolutely unacceptable. And until the United States is ready and willing and able to join the international community in true solutions, I think we are going to remain pariahs in the international community. And that is in fact what happened in the Bali conference, when a representative from Papua New Guinea, the negotiator of that delegation, said to the United States, if you're not going to lead, move aside. And at the end of that conference, the US delegation did agree to the agreements. So I think this shift hopefully will happen with Obama and others in his administration. But I do want to say that this relates deeply to the issues of justice, very clearly. The human face of climate change is evident in the pictures that we just saw. But I was recently in New Orleans with the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew and his symposium on climate change and Katrina, the effect of victims of Katrina, which, as many of you know, is still massive and present. And the 9th Ward in New Orleans is a disaster. It is an absolute disaster. And this conference was largely Europeans who have been doing these religion and science and environment conferences with the Patriarch for many years. And the Europeans were absolutely appalled that this could happen, this neglect of the African American community who was so adversely affected by Katrina and remains adversely affected, in addition to the environmental justice issues of pollution from the chemical industries all along the Mississippi, what they call Cancer Alley. Since I've just mentioned the patriarch, I also want to say, I'm going to talk about what's happening in the world's religions, but I want to elevate what the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew, based in Istanbul, has done on these issues. Over 15 years, he has had 8 symposia on religion, science, and environment, and invited major scientists, major people from the EU, UN, UNDP, UN Environment Program, and so on, to come together, to bring together the various stakeholders in these issues around water issues, largely in the European community. But the last several ones have been in the Amazon and then in the Arctic to highlight climate change. And I'll just give you this visual image that was so powerful with the Arctic Symposium, where the patriarch has spoken of the destruction of the environment over many, many years with very powerful metaphors like this is ecological sin, this is crimes against creation. But here he brought together a group of religious leaders from many different traditions. They stood in the bow of the boat. The prayers were silent. It was a moment when the religions could come together beyond even the differences of their prayer and their language, to say something huge is at stake. Because this was a boat right at the foot of one of the great glaciers. The colors were magnificent, the blue, the light on the water, the sense of here's the ice melting. And what was so dramatic was the patriarch turned to face the iceberg. And all the religious leaders turned as well to say that this is a moment when we have to witness, not speak, not necessarily even moralize, but we have to witness before the beauty and complexity of nature. It was an extraordinary moment. And at the same time, the Inuits, who are deeply and adversely affected by climate change, came out on with their kayaks to greet those of us on this symposium, and a chorus was singing on another boat. It was a beautiful and dramatic moment of this sense that we are linked as people in trying to face this extraordinary change that is upon us, but also drawing in this beauty of nature, which I want to return to at the end of these comments, because I think if we are able to go into some of the deepest sensibilities that religion has to offer, namely awe and wonder and beauty, that there's a numinous presence in nature that is being destroyed. And if we destroy that numinous presence, we are destroying something of the divine, something of the spirit, something of the human heart that will never be replaced. How we articulate that sensibility of awe and wonder and beauty and complexity that has taken billions of years to evolve, that's a way in that also links us to scientists who are equally distressed, I can assure you, of what is happening. Because for them, as they study these systems, they are deeply inspired as well by this awe and wonder. That's a way we can meet the scientific community.